Now that the Senate has agreed to open debate on gun legislation, both sides are digging in for weeks of emotional and passionate arguments in public and behind closed doors. We've already seen high-profile lobbying from the Newtown families and the NRA. Could be just the tip of the iceberg. Tom Perriello is a former Democratic congressman from Virginia who's now president of the Center for American Progress Action Fund. Michael Needham is the CEO of Heritage Action for America. Welcome to both of you. Michael, I want to start with you. You guys have been upset by what you've seen Pat Toomey's done, somebody who's an ally for you guys on a lot of fiscal issues. Why is this gun issue so important to Heritage Action?
Well, look, I think that this is a pretty good example of everything that's wrong in Washington. We don't need Pat Toomey and Joe Manchin and Barack Obama and Chuck Schumer going behind closed doors and drafting a piece of legislation. We got the bill, the final bill, last night. We've started going through it. There's all sorts of problems in this bill. There's the potential that employers are going to be able to use the NICS database to do background checks without the permission of somebody applying for a job. That's not what we want. What is this going to do to the privacy safeguards that are in place between an individual and a psychotherapist? So there's all sorts of stuff that needs to be looked at. We were looking at it last night. We should have an open process where people can know what they're voting on and know what the implications are. But it's not going on here.
But there is going to be an open process now.
Well, there's going to be an open process over the course of the next week. We're going to put lots of information out there about what's going on. I think you're going to see very different votes as we come forward. You have 31 Republicans who are on record opposing this already. 16 from a lot of red states, a lot of voters who are getting aware of what's going on, knowing that this is going to lead to a federal gun registry. That's going to change a lot of votes because of transparency, because of people understanding the issue.
This issue, you know, he brings up the mental health, and there's been a lot of attempts to try to improve this NICS database, but this database, and they call it the NICS database, but it has to do with if there's a filing on all of this. It's interesting, you know, the NRA has actually called for being more, probably getting more aggressive at including some mental health issues in the NICS database. They don't want to change the law, but they want to get more aggressive there. And this issue of privacy hasn't popped up a lot. Have you been surprised?
Well, I think it is being discussed a lot by the policy experts as well as by politicians, but I think the most important thing here is that our elected officials are going to have to go on the record saying where they stand, and I think it's important for that to be a deliberative process. You know, my brief time in politics, I learned it's always easier to be a no than a yes, because you can always dislike something in a bill, but it's even easier to not have to vote in the first place. And I think what the activists the clearest message was to demand a vote. We deserve to see where people stand, and there are going to be some pro-gun safety amendments and some pro-gun rights amendments that are offered, and we're going to see those things debated out. And I think elected officials are going to have to tell their constituents where they stand.
Let me ask you this, Michael. Why did you guys are scoring the cloture vote, right?
Yeah, look.
Why? Why do that? I mean, why are we in this position?
Members of Congress should be scored based on the vote that matters, and the vote that matters in the Senate often is the procedural vote, and so we've done that a lot.
You think a procedural vote to start debate is what matters? I can at least buy the argument, the one at the end.
Yeah. Look, this is
a
bad bill. This is a bill about optics, and it's been interesting. You've seen in the last 24 hours people on both the right and the left saying this is a bill that would do nothing to stop what happened in Newtown. This would be a bill that does nothing to stop what happened in Aurora. Pat Toomey was on on radio yesterday in Philadelphia, and he admitted that this bill wouldn't do anything to stop Newtown. So this is a bad bill that's about political optics, not about solving problems, and our goal is to stop it.
It's significant when activists have brought that up in the NRA statement as well, often leave out Virginia Tech and Gabby Gifford's shooting when they mention that, because this bill does address tightening up and helping states participate in the database that could affect some of the people that have purchased guns. We've seen over a 10-year period nearly 2 million people who were dinged based on background checks. This is generally happening within a matter of a couple of minutes. Nobody thinks this is going to solve every problem, but I think what Mr. Toomey and Mr. Manchin felt was this is where we can make one step forward, where we can say what everyone I know, right and left, thinks is we should be able to keep guns out of the hands of people who've been convicted of felonies, and in order to do that, you need to have a stronger background check.
Does Heritage have a gun bill? Do you guys have an alternative to this? Or do
Look, we have a lot of ideas about what you can do on school safety. We have a lot of ideas about what you can do with mental illness issues. The problem is, you look at Tucson, that's somebody who passed a federal background check. You look at what happened in Virginia Tech, that's somebody who should have been in the NICS system. So we have gun laws on the books that we need to be enforcing, and we have separate problems which are about school safety, which are about mental illness, that we need to address. This is a bill which is fundamentally about giving politicians political cover to be dealing with a problem while they're not actually solving it.
All right, that's going to be one of the arguments from conservatives. A lot of liberals are going to look at this and say, let's say you get this background check bill. I mean, we are talking, some gun control advocates are going to say it's doing this much, and then the issue is going to go away. What do you say to them?
I think that's going to be up to the American people and up to activists on both sides to see whether this is the beginning of a longer conversation or not. For example, there are going to be up or down votes probably on assault weapons and on magazine capacities. There are going to be ones from the other side on concealed carry and other issues. People are going to use those going forward to say, okay, here's as gun violence continues, which it will. The question is, can we show that these things made a difference or not? I think if people can show that by tightening up the background check where an enormous % of sales are happening at gun shows and over the internet, tightening that up, making sure states are complying with the database so that these people are checked in that system that need to be, then I think people will want to build on that and appreciate what happened. And if it doesn't make a difference, then that's significant as well.
I want to go to this issue that we were talking about it right before we went on. Both of you sort of admitting this whole the idea that the votes about whether to have votes have become important to voters. Should they be? This idea of the cloture votes.
Care about why? Look, if Obamacare is passing, if Obamacare is a 2,400-page
shouldn't it only matter if it's signed by the president? Shouldn't it only matter if this thing actually passes?
And members of the House and the Senate should do everything they can to stop this. When we look at this bill creates virtually universal background checks. There's two ways to enforce a universal background check. You can have stings, and it's specifically stipulated in the bill. They're going to have stings. They can put you in jail for up to 5 years, even if you didn't know you were breaking the law, if they catch you at a sting. Or you have a federal gun registry.
Let me stop you right there. If you didn't know you were breaking the law, but you're breaking the law. I mean, not breaking the law. I mean, I went 40 and a 25. I didn't know it was a 25.
What I think you're getting at as well.
Should you go to jail for 5 years? And so when we have universal background checks, and you're talking about stings going on at gun shows, you're talking about a federal gun registry and the implications of that. I agree with the judge on the Ninth Circuit Court who said the American people only get one chance to vote for a federal gun registry before our guns start getting grabbed.
Which is why it's explicitly banned in the bill, which is why with what you're talking about knowing who you're selling to, that's the difference between it being a misdemeanor and a felony. These are good people who are trying to get this thing solved. These are people who care deeply about the Second Amendment. In the cases of Senator Toomey and Senator Manchin, trying to balance with common sense the rights of privacy, the rights of the Second Amendment, with the fact that kids are getting gunned down in schools in our country. And I think this was a victory of common
bills
sense.
That come out at 8, 11 o'clock at night, and then we're talking about the next morning. We should get together and let's talk about the fact that this issue.
Let me go to this.
But we've been talking for years about it,
but
right?
Let me go to this issue of a quote-unquote gun registry. Every time there's a crime committed, the police seem to know immediately. They're able to take a serial number from the gun, and they're able to actually figure it out. It seems to me we already sort of have a registry.
But Chuck, you know what happened in New York with information going out of gun owners having their information released publicly, twice in Missouri, information that wasn't supposed to get out going out there. So you have a problem when you're forcing people to sign up, register, talk about what guns they have, and then that information gets out. That's not what the system's supposed to be.
But we've had the licensed gun dealers holding these. We've been doing this for 40 years. This is not groundbreaking stuff. I don't think we need to put red herrings out there. There's a lot of good faith that's been done by the gun sellers, a lot of people who care deeply about guns and gun rights, who know how to do this.
Where does this stop? So in the underlying bill, in the Reid bill, I go away for 2 weeks if I don't transfer my gun to my roommate and pay all the background check fees.
And I think the question is, where does it start? Where can we take a start in a small state?
I think it's interesting. Where does it start versus where does it stop? And they're playing my song. Thank you both. This was great. Tom Perriello, Michael Needham, thank you for sharing your views, doing it civilly. And I think debate will continue, just not here.
Thanks for having us.
Yeah.